All right, thank you for listening in. I am your host, Jake Allen of the Lessons with Leaders podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us, Tim Petrillo of the Restaurant People. Tim, this is a platform, a podcast where I bring some of the most influential South Florida business leaders on to talk about their story. Very excited to have you on. Today we're recording. It's November 11th. It's the beginning of the tourist season with the great migration of snowbirds into South Florida. So appreciate taking time out of your day. For those who do not know, Restaurant People, YOLO, Bowtop, TRP Taste, most recently Rosa Sky down in Miami. Not going to steal too much of your thunder, Tim. Thanks again for being on. Just kind of kick it off. Let's tell my listeners, tell myself a little bit about yourself and the Restaurant People.
Sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me on. I appreciate that. We started the Restaurant People in 1997. I had always been in the restaurant business. I went to go work for Houston's, traveled around the country with them, opening restaurants for them. Then Mark Militello, a celebrity chef, brought me back to South Florida to open up he had plans to open 5 restaurants, which we did. And that was around 94, 95. And then I went on my own and started developing Himmershey Bar and Grill, which was our first restaurant in 1996 and launched in 97. And then we opened up about a restaurant a year so we had like 9 stores. Okay. And then I migrated. Alan Hooper and I decided to do Urban Street Development, which is a development company that we recognized very quickly that we could go into blighted areas, put a concept in, make people feel more comfortable with that area, and then other operators would start showing up, but we had the real estate so we could drive the value that way. And that was pretty successful for us. And then, we've been doing restaurants and development ever since. That's kind of how we got started, and we continue that to this day. We've done a bunch of mixed-use projects, multifamily office, obviously hospitality. We're in hotel business in Tallahassee. Yeah, so...
Yeah, absolutely.
They're doing construction. Do you hear that?
I do hear it a little bit. It sounds like the urban development's right outside the door.
Yeah, I apologize about that. They're downstairs doing construction. Sorry.
No worries. So I'm an FSU grad. I know you went to FIU.
Yeah.
I was, and everyone else I know was massive fans of Township down here as well as up in Tallahassee. Since a lot of my listeners are coming from South Florida, I know you have YOLO and many other locations across Los Olas Boulevard. Just you mind rattling off just a couple of the more notorious or well-known restaurants that people can really know who we're listening to?
Sure. So we have Java and Jam, YOLO, O Lounge, Rooftop, Taste, Boatyard, Tarpon River Brewery, Township, as you mentioned. We have Rosa Sky. We have S3 on the beach. We have Casablanca. I know I'm leaving something out. I feel like you're asking me names of my children. I forget them. So I apologize. But and then we've owned and operated a bunch of different restaurants across. We've owned and operated and been a part of more than 92 stores. So
okay.
When Anthony's Coal Fired Pizza, we were his first development partner. And we developed the West Coast in Orlando before we sold that the first time at 35 units. Then we were part of a group. We work with private equity, and we purchased a concept called Shrimp Basket, and we grew that from 20 to 50, 38 stores, and we sold that. So we do a bunch of that kind of stuff as well.
Okay, very cool. And
but in Tallahassee, we did College Town. That was I went to school in Tallahassee as well.
Okay.
And I went there for the first 2 years. I finished up at FIU for the hospitality program. Not that FSU didn't have a great hospitality program. They do. I felt it would be better to come to FIU because you can get real world experience at world class, hospitality restaurants, resorts, hotels in Miami. That's why I moved down for that.
Yeah, the restaurant connoisseurs of Tallahassee probably have a much more shallow pocket and earlier ID than some of the Miami folks.
Yeah, exactly.
So in those 25 years, you've been incredibly successful, opened up a tremendous amount of restaurants, hotels. I wouldn't mind just hearing a little bit about like the 1997, 98, 99. Like, what were those really early stages like? I know you left Houston, so you got a lot of experience.
Yeah, it was brutal. I'll be honest. So it was interesting enough. we just had our hospitality summit. That's when we bring all of our team and we do a day-long retreat. And a lot of these people didn't know the story, but so when we first opened Himmershey Bar and Grill, myself, Alan Hooper, and Peter Balukas are our partners. Peter's our chef partner, and we opened up that store. And now, coming from Houston and that kind of background, when you open up a store, you're off to the races right away. Okay. They are such a great brand. Everybody knows what they are, and they line up. And when you're doing so many openings for them, you tend to believe that's the reality of the world. So we built Himmershey Bar and Grill, and all of a sudden that was kind of the expectation that was in my mind. We're going to open this thing, and it's going to be like off to the races. Well, we opened up with a thud. I mean, there was 25, 30 covers on the weekend. Okay. A lot of times during the week, there was 2 times we did 0 covers. Nobody came in the door. And I'm at the front door trying to keep a staff's morale up, telling them that it's going to get better. They're there to make money. They're not stupid. They see the writing on the wall. For a business to be successful, they need guests to come through the door. But we were able to, build the business. And back then there wasn't social media. There wasn't like, you couldn't invite some influencers in and have them share their experience, and all of a sudden you get it out to, right now you got like 5,000 people telling their, 10,000 or 5,000 people about us, right? Back then you had the Sun Sentinel, and they had one voice streaming to 500,000 people. So you could do one of 2 things. You could advertise to get your name out, which we couldn't afford, or you could hope for a restaurant critic from the Sun Sentinel to come in and give you a good review. And we didn't know who the restaurant critic was because it was blind back then, and we certainly couldn't afford advertising. So what happened was, now you fast forward, we opened in right around mid-August. Now it's October, okay? And we are out of money. We have no more money. We invested everything we had into that restaurant. We invested family money. We invested all of our friends, anybody, and we scraped together about $140,000 and opened that restaurant. Okay? Which by today's standard is very, very low. It's unheard of, right?
25
but we did
a little bit different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But we did a construction and everything, just to put in perspective, we're building a restaurant right now that is well over $5 million. That's the difference of one, how things change in cost wise, but how the business has evolved as well. Okay. So we were out of money, and I'm literally, I am getting my resume together. I am now about to take it to the next step, and I'm starting to come to terms that this is not going to happen. So I'm going to go work for somebody else and change my career, and I'm just going to be somebody else's employee, right? And that was a hard pill to swallow, let me tell you. So, the night of my birthday, actually, it was just when the Sun Sentinel was starting to move to online, and they would put their Friday paper up on a Thursday night where it had to review.
Early 2000s. This is like I'm thinking .com boom, so like early 2000s, 99.
Yeah, it's 1997. Okay. This is when it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they actually printed a review that night. It was coming out in the Showtime. That used to be the entertainment paper. The next day on Friday, and we could not have written it better ourselves. Okay. This was a glowing review, best restaurant that Broward had seen, a whole 9 yards. And what typically happens is these critics, because they, it's a small society and they all know each other.
Right.
And if I'm a critic from the Herald, back then every paper had their own critic, right? It's not like it's consolidated like it is now. But if M.L. Warren was the critic back then at Sun Sentinel, they knew the critic at Miami Herald. Okay. They wouldn't, if M.L. Warren wrote a good piece, and they had a bad experience, they probably won't slam that experience, okay? Because they don't want to look, out of professional courtesy, they're not going to make the other critic look horrible, right? So we got one great review, and they all started coming in as great reviews. So we were off to the races, and we went from doing 30 covers the weekend before to 400 covers, okay? That's how impactful that review is. And, which brings to light a whole nother set of issues, right? Your staff is not ready to do 10 times the business they did a week ago, right? It's like you were getting slaughtered. but they were making money. We're all making money, so we're going to figure it out. And we were off the races. And then about 4 months later, I was like, oh, you know what, we should do this again.
Okay.
So then we bought the parking lot that we used to valet cars to. It was a little hair salon, and we built that Tarpon Bend there, and Tarpon Bend building. And then we just started growing then we opened up a Sidebar, which was a bar down on 2nd Street. And then we opened up YOLO, and we just kind of kept rolling from there.
So getting the momentum, and you mentioned one thing as I think is changed the industry completely. You used to have one food critic talking to 5,000 people, and everybody's a food critic. Kind of changing gears here a little bit. In your 25 years, like, what have you seen from your experience regarding the change of social media, the change of the internet, and just, I mean, it's completely different, right?
So social media has changed the game in so many ways, okay? And not all positive, okay? But some very positive things. Right now, when we're thinking through menus and drinks and menu presentations, we put so much more thought into having a Instagrammable moment when we deliver the food. Okay. Back then you didn't have to do that. And those moments, when they are in the right social media influencers content, can go crazy. I'll give you a perfect example. We just rolled out this flaming tomahawk steak at YOLO. This is like 2 months ago, right? And we started the first week, we were selling about 12 of them, which was considered good, right?
Big steak.
For the week, yeah. So, it's a $200 steak. It comes out, it's on a rolling cart, the whole 9 yards. Well, we had this one influencer put this, she did a reel on it. And
everybody wants a $200
tomahawk. Now, just to put in perspective, last month we sold $70,000 of the tomahawks. Okay, this girl's had almost 2 million views on this video. 2 days ago, a person drove from Fort Pierce because they saw it for lunch, and we don't have it at lunch. We ended up making it for them because they were like, we just drove 2 hours for it. I'm like, oh my gosh. But that's the power of social media.
Okay.
And it gives an advantage to some really good, talented people that you would never necessarily hear of,
Okay. I think everybody wants to be an influencer. You have people with 2,000-3,000 followers that have to keep the prestige of their page to be that of the person with the 100,000. It's changed the game a lot. And what are you saying?
Just what you say. We have our marketing director, Nikki. Everybody's an influencer, right? Everybody is this influencer in their own mind. So she has to do a really good job of vetting who the real deal is, and because we have people approach us all the time. It's the amount of emails that we get that says, "Hello, I'm an influencer. I would love to dine at your restaurant. You don't have to pay me. I'll just want a free meal." And so then you dig into how many people she influences, and it's he or her, and it's like thousands. It's like, well, that doesn't necessarily get you a free meal.
Yeah, well, I got about, I had to restart my Instagram, so about 500 followers. So I don't know if I'm going to make the cut to get the $200 tomahawk.
Yeah.
But also you mentioned, the Sun Centel having the first press and the fact that no one else wanted to go against them, right? So they come out, the first press kind of dictates the narrative, if you will, or at least it did back in that day. And they also spoke about how Houston has so much power behind the brand when you were doing those restaurant openings. You've now created that with restaurant people. Like, what is the difference? And I know it's vast, so it's kind of a loaded question. What's the difference between opening a new restaurant or new rooftop Rose of Sky, for example, now with the power of the restaurant people, and how do you leverage the overall brand to go into a particular restaurant?
Well, we do that quite a bit. I mean, we do that from getting locations. Okay. Before, when we weren't established, landlords would say, no, we're not going to rent to you, right? Now we have landlords who seek us out to go in there, develop, incentivize us by giving us dollars to build out our space, because we're an established brand now. And And when we open our doors, knock on wood, people tend to show up, right? So, and we're very, very, very fortunate with that. Right. And it's a lot different. Now we open up stores, we have our management team on site 3 months out, okay. Before, back then it was me doing the hiring, doing everything. And it was a lot. I mean, not just, it was me, myself, Peter, and, right. but I didn't have it. It was when I had my first 3 restaurants, I was the GM of 3 restaurants. And it was an ongoing joke because they were all within 2 blocks of each other. And people would just see me running around the street all the time because I'm like heading to one restaurant, then I'm heading to the other one, then I'm going back to the other one, and it was funny because guests would be in these restaurants and their friends were like, oh, I was at such and such restaurant last night. I was at River House and I had a conversation with Tim and it's like, that's when I was at Hiroshi Bar, right? And I was at Farming. He's everywhere. And but that was not, it was out of need. We didn't have the resources to pay people. So we had to do it.
So I'm mentioned right next to each other. I've gone to Java and Jam for breakfast and YOLO for happy hour. By the way, arguably the best old fashioned in town.
Thank you.
I have potentially been one of the few people who actually cleared profit in terms of bottomless mimosas. I've had a good time at YOLO. I've had a great time at both locations. And what I'm getting to there, other than saying I enjoy your restaurants, is the fact that you do have very good place locations throughout Los Olas Boulevard and throughout Florida, or throughout South Florida rather. How important as a restaurant is that in terms of actual location? And I know it's arguably the most important thing, but truly, what is the magnitude of having a good location? And what would you say for someone who wants to open up a restaurant regarding?
Okay, so I always say this: it's not important. It is crucial, critical. It far outweighs everything else by a landslide. I would rather be the worst restaurateur in the best location than the best restaurateur in a worse location, because location will win out every time.
Okay.
So in the beginning, when you're starting, we just couldn't afford to go into Class A real estate.
Right.
We first off, landlords didn't want us because we weren't qualified in their minds to do that. We were a big risk. And 2, we couldn't afford paying their rents. Okay. Right. So, but now I look at that a whole lot different. Right now, we try to make sure we like to combine our rent line and our advertising line. We look at those things the best kind of together. So if you like to get a 6 to 7% rent line on your revenue and a 2 to 3% on your advertising marketing budget, well, you got a 10%. So if we're in a location we're paying 10%, we better not be advertising anything because we have people falling in our place, right? Okay. So that's kind of how we look at it.
Okay. And then on the flip side of that, so I mean, a new restaurant who just simply cannot get that Class A, would you just suggest a heavy promotion through social media? What are good advertising mediums?
Okay, so first off, you really need to vet who your audience is going to be. It's hard to do that with social media because you don't know who these influencers are, who they're speaking to, right? So you need to make sure that the people you're aligning yourself with are the people that you want to be your guests, right? So, and it just kind of works like that. You have to make sure that we do so much more. We place so much more dollars in digital media versus print media now, right? I mean, one, it's a lot easier to get an ROI on that. You can really see the engagement versus print, and you can pivot a lot quicker too, right? So if something's not working inside the store, a promotion that we launch and it's just not working, we can pivot. Where in print, you're done, you're set. Right? So there's a lot of benefits to that. But to answer your question, if you're not in a good location, first off, you need to drill down on what makes you guys special. Okay, and amplify that.
Okay.
All right. And you can amplify that through your ways of advertising, how you promote it inside your store and all those type of things. Okay.
And I like that. And it kind of brings me to another point is regarding having a portfolio of restaurants. What's the diversity, really? I mean, I know myself, but some people listening may not. The diversity of the cuisine, the food, the type, the price, the caliber. And how do you kind of go about managing that entire,
So I will say it's probably not the smartest thing to do.
Okay.
Because obviously when you replicate, it's a lot easier to multiply, right?
Right.
When you create new concepts, it takes a lot more thought. You just can't pick up and pop the whole staff down there at a new restaurant, right? So like when we were doing multiple events, it's easy. You just, you could get your trainers, same menu, same operation, same standards, all that kind of stuff. And you just take your playbook here and you move it over to another location. Whereas when we're doing new locations, you have to be more thoughtful how you create it. You have to be, you have to conceptualize it. You have to do new menus, new food, new recipes, new everything, right? But the bones are all the same, meaning our operating procedures are all the same. Menu is different, but we can take a manager at Java and Jam and put them at Casablanca, and the standards of service and time standards and execution is all almost identical. Okay. So the food and the concept might be different, but the operating procedures are all very, very similar.
Okay. And then more on the business front for anyone who's listening in, who's a business leader and they're starting to go from, X amount of revenue to they're trying to scale their business.
Yeah.
You mentioned when you started off, you were the face of the actual restaurant, and then you're doing everything. You had every hat. There's no way you can do that at this point. How important is autonomy within your actual establishments, and how important is the autonomy within the restaurant people, having your people have the trust to do what they do, and how do you what's your day-to-day, I guess, look like right now in your position now?
So, well, again, I get my business on a typical day. I get in the morning. I get in early, probably 7:30. Okay. I knock out all kind of my office work then because nobody's really around until 9. People start coming to the office around 9. So I get a solid 2 hours of just knocking stuff out without being, interrupted. Then I typically go into the stores around. I just got back from YOLO and Java just now to have this podcast. Fortunately, the one good thing, the reason I did a lot of concepts in a geographic area is I found I didn't want to be on a plane all the time. I was doing that with Houston's and it was not fun. Right. So if you want to have multiple stores in a small geography, you have to do different kind of concepts, right? Okay. So that's the path we took. But like yesterday, I can see the majority of our stores in one day. Okay. Right. Because they're all I just drive around, and you don't have to spend a whole lot of time in the store to see if it's being managed properly or not. Right. You look at the numbers. You as a guest can walk in any restaurant and say, okay, this is a crazy show here. Or it's a shit show. I'm sure. Yeah. I know everybody they've walked in a restaurant. You can just see the chaos on the staff that this is not a well-run machine.
Walk in, walk out. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I try to pop in. I want to make sure that I have an open dialogue with my managers, if they're because it is so critical I am somewhat removed now from, they're the boots on the ground, and I want to be able to know the staff and not be intimidated by me and say, hey, how's this going? How's this selling? And what do you think about this? And they have an open dialogue, right? Because that's where you really find the nuggets of gold to make critical decisions.
No, that's very important. And having that open channel. I think Google, just offhand, just things I've read, Wall Street Journal, whatnot. I think Google had for a very long time. They don't still do it. All their employees have 10% of their days usually do something creative, right? And then you have some of the best inventions coming from that. And you have that same in your restaurant. Hey, what's cooking? What's not? Oh, maybe we try this one thing, and it becomes the $200 tomahawk or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very important. And we just, November 11th today, the day we're recording, we just had the midterm election, and not to get political, I'm not going that route, so don't worry. But we just, reelected a governor who kept the state relatively open, in terms of, compared to other places. That is not.
No, he did a great job. I'm not going to get political here. Okay, I'm going to speak from. We were in 5 states at that time, right? We had 5 states at that time, and 3 of them were blue states and 2 of them were red states. Okay. The red states performed so much better because they were kept open. Okay. And I feel, and just from the team morale in the red states was so much better. The mental attitude from the team, they weren't. Listen, it was a moment in time where in the other attitude was, oh my, it's the top apocalyptic. So, I would say that DeSantis, I'm not trying to be political. I'm just saying, right. And I'm just saying from a business perspective, from the restaurant business perspective, DeSantis was a godsend for what he did for us. Okay. Right. I helped 4 different companies from New York move their headquarters to Florida, sizable restaurant companies, because they wanted local knowledge and where they should go. And I helped them through that process. Come down to the South Florida market because they had this infrastructure that they have to survive. Okay.
Right.
At the end of the day, you have to survive. So they moved it. We were open. The byproduct of us being open was we had the best tourism numbers that we had seen in over a decade. Okay.
Right.
Being the fact that Europe was shut down, international travel was shut down. A lot of states were shut down. Coastal communities in Texas and Florida and in Alabama did very well because you had everybody visiting.
And you felt that here. I felt that here in Florida.
Oh yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Sure.
How without going too deep, because the question is more so regarding how did a restaurant or a company with I believe you have close to 800 employees, part-time, full-time.
Yeah.
Like how do you guys weather that storm? And I mean we're out almost completely. Like give me the experience of the last 3 years.
Yeah, so it was a challenge to say the least. I remember I was actually out in Utah and the mayor called me and he says, "Tim, we have to shut down your restaurants." I said, "What? What are you talking about?" He goes, "We're shutting down all the restaurants, all food and beverage. We're going to shelter in for 2 weeks." And I go, "Is this going to be 2 weeks?" And he's like, everyone thought it was going to be 2 weeks, right? So 2 weeks turned into a month, so we made a decision. We talk a lot about our culture and us being family and everything like that. And we can't say we're a family in the good times and not act like we're a family in the bad times.
Right.
So we made a commitment. We made a commitment that we will pay you as long as we can. Okay. We had a healthy balance sheet and we made the announcement. So it took the anxiety off of the staff. Okay. So they had a stable place. Mm-hmm. And we did. We paid them, and it was a godsend. In hindsight, it was a godsend to us. Okay, it was the right thing to do, not only for our employees but for the company. Okay, because what happened was when we were allowed to open, we were opened like that. We didn't have to try to hire staff because we didn't have. Everybody knew their job. There was no training that was needed. It was like we just opened again. Okay. Everybody came back and it was off to the races. And we were able to generate a lot of revenue like that. Right. And a lot of other people struggled to get talent. We were able to hire really talented people because they were let go. And it's funny, even in the we were shut down and we hired away 4 top talented people from other companies. And we didn't even know if we were going to open, but they came on the market and we're like, we're going to grab this talent. So it it was the right thing to do. It was hard to do, but it was the right choice, and it worked out for us.
No, absolutely, and a lot of good. I like that. You can't be family at a good time and not a bad time. You got to take care of people as much as you can. Obviously, pay dividend to you and your company. One thing about COVID, I consider it like the great accelerator. It made a lot of things that were already in process happen quicker. Two of which I want to talk about because they really impact the restaurant industry. One is sanitation. Two is online delivery. When we started to see, I remember seeing like pictures on social media of them cleaning or doing like sanitation spray, mass Lysol sprays across the movie theater or airplanes. Like we should have been doing this beforehand. I don't know why why we're doing this now. And the other one is just the convenience of, everybody was sheltered for 6 or so months, however long they wanted to be. Uber Eats, DoorDash, massive, big impact to the restaurant business. Like, how have you guys changed positively because of COVID and those two factors? And then how do you stay on the front line of both of those?
Sure. So I agree with what you said on both fronts. We pride ourselves on how clean we are in our stores. But it always, like anything, you can always do better. And this brought to light elevating everyone's standards. And I was put on the governor's opening committee. Okay. I was put on the governor, the county, and the city's opening committee, right, to represent restaurants and how we should open. And as we were going through the standards of what the cleaning policies were, it was amazing how inconsistent policies were across gyms to airlines to hotels to restaurants, right? So I think it did shine a light on a problem that is now much, much better. The whole delivery system is, as a consumer, it's great. Okay. As an operator, it's terrible, okay? Because, first off, the fees that delivery services charge the restaurants are egregious, okay? Secondly, some restaurants, just their food is not made to be delivered, okay? You have these, like, for instance, at S3, there might be 4 sauces that go in one dish, and when we put that on the side, because we can't dress it on the plate because it'll sog out, right, by the time it gets, so we put that on the side, and people that don't know how to dress it properly, then the dish is terrible, and it looks bad for the restaurant, So I'm not a huge fan of, listen, I get delivered. When I'm at home, I'm getting delivered. Okay. Right. So I'm a huge fan of it that way. I'm not a huge fan of it as an operator because we do get, it was cold. It was, there's things that happen on delivery service that you just are out of our control. Right. But it has changed the industry. There's no question. When people go out to eat now, they want an experience. Mm-hmm. They're not getting food anymore. They get food. They get restaurant food. Any restaurant they want, if they want their food, they get it delivered to their house. Right. Now people are going out. They want an experience. Okay, so it has to be something that stimulates more than just filling their stomach, right? And so that's why now our concepts are much more higher energy. We're layering in a lot more experiential things in the restaurant itself.
A lot of, as you said, Instagrammable.
Exactly.
Places, right?
Exactly.
So,
I mean, you've seen the renovation of YOLO. It's like, okay, where can we put Instagram stuff? Okay.
Get a little selfie wall or something of that sort.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, very cool. I've enjoyed speaking with you. Last thing I want to talk about, and we'll wrap, and this is more so for people who are listening who actually have a small business or they're restaurateurs or they can actually relate to your story. And whatever someone really foresees happening, we're definitely in a slower period economically, and 2023 is expected to be a recession. Yeah. You opened YOLO in 2007, 2008. Hospitality is typically more impacted. Some other industries is more volatile due to economic times. What do you really see happening in the next 12 to 18 months? And more importantly, for someone who is a small business owner or someone who is a business owner, like how can you prepare, especially in the hospitality industry, and kind of make your way through tougher times?
So what we typically do, we try to budget for the worst, okay, and be prepared for that, so we can, because it's always easier to add than take away, right? So I do think that the next 2 years, listen, it's like it's been a great run, okay? I mean, let's be honest here. The last few years have been even considering COVID, it has been positive. Okay. Now we're going into a recessionary period where, people are not going to be spending like they did. Okay. So you have to be prepared for that. I will say that, we are expecting it to slow down. When we're looking at, we're still growing, we're still going to be in growth mode, but you have to understand for a restaurant to, like, we're looking at deal nows that are going to be opening in 2 years, right? So it takes, by the time the building is complete, by the time we go and do our build out, it's a 2-year window. So when I opened up YOLO on September 30th, 2008. Okay. That was the day the market set the record for the biggest drop. Okay. That was my grand opening party. Okay. And everybody's like, oh boy, I bet you're sorry you opened up this. But in reality, this has been in motion for 24 months, right?
Yeah, you can't just stop now, right?
You can't just stop.
The grand opening day is long awaited.
So, and I remember being so consumed with stress about this, right? You're almost, basically saying that chances are you're going to fail, right? You're in your mind, that's all that's happened. And what happened was, and it's always darkest before the dawn. And any type of situation, anytime we've been through a cycle, it's always darkest before the dawn, and then it just kind of opens up, and it's great, right? So what happened was with YOLO, because we were the new spot, right? Even people wanted to check it out. So we were busy. And because we were in a recessionary time, nobody was investing in new restaurants. So no new restaurants were opening for 2 years. So we rode the honeymoon period. Okay. Normally it's a 6-month window. We rode it for almost 2.5 years because we were the new guys. Still,
the last new kid on the block.
The last one that opened, right? So it was counterintuitive, right? You would never think that, but that's actually what happened. Now, we're not banking on that. We're opening a restaurant in Miami in January. We know we're going to get a good pop in the beginning, but we are, we're definitely, we're being conservative on how we budget this restaurant and how we open this, just to make sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a lot of good stuff. Obviously, big fan myself of all the restaurants, and again, being a former FSU guy, moving down to Fort Lauderdale, very, very experienced with the.
When did you go to Florida State?
Yeah, so I'm gonna whatever you want to call opposite of dating myself is, I'm gonna show my youth here. So I graduated in 2018. I was there.
Oh wow.
2016. I was a transfer student. Got my AA back home. I'm from Brevard County.
Okay.
So had 1 year done in dual enrollment, and just figured stay one more year. So I was in college for 3 years up at FSU, and
okay, so you saw college town evolve.
I was there as it was really getting finished built, but yeah, it was. I have a lot of friends who were there before me, starting like 2013, 2014, when that was the IM fields. That was just the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, that's right.
And then it's the place to be now, and so urban development did almost all of it.
Yeah, they did all that. Yeah, we did all that. We did that. We just finished the Hotel Indigo there.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we have one more. We're going to be expanding the hotel there, and that's our last development piece up there as of now. As in the 6 blocks of College Town, that's our last development piece.
Okay. Yeah, that area has grown, significantly. Like I said, it used to be the old Iron Fields. Now it's a little bit more of a flair. I speak to the FSU grads of the 2000s, 2010s. They're like, oh yeah, we had and not to say they're bad places, they're just older places, Bullwinkle's, Potts. I'm like, oh, we had a little bit of flair. We were going to Township. We were going to forgot the name of the Recess, the Cajun spot. I name escapes.
Goose.
Yeah. So a little bit more of a flair. I guess it prepared us for the sophistication of South Florida. Absolutely.
Well, it's definitely different when I was up there. I mean, when I was up there. That was all warehouse district, and you get nickel beers now. Like at Recess, they're selling $1,500 tables on weekends, right? To these kids,
which is
incredible.
Going back as an alumni, a $1,500 table. I'm like, yeah, take my money.
Yeah, in Tallahassee, right? It's crazy.
Right. Well, very cool, man. I appreciate it. It was great speaking with you.
Nice to speak with you too.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna